Hello, and welcome to the NFL Contest Show. I'm your host, Jesse Flynn. Well, we've made it to week 15 of the NFL season, and what a week this thing is turning out to be, as there is just COVID infections going on all around the NFL right now. The lines for these games for week 15 are just jumping all over the place. There's so many question marks for the games coming up. But hey, I'm looking forward to it. This is the time where money is made. This is where it's time to make a move and try to put myself into that first place position. Week 14 had a positive week. Went 3-2. It was a tough week. Those two losses were pretty hard to swallow, with Cleveland losing by half a point, and the Chicago Bears having every opportunity to cover that spread, and yet somehow they were just unable to keep it within the point spread against Green Bay, even though they were winning at parts of that game. But what are you going to do? It's the NFL. Those type of things happen. Got to just move on to the next week. There's always another game to bet, and I'm looking forward to week 15. Currently, my standings in the Circa contest, I'm at 46, 23-1. That has me tied for 27th place, but only 4.5 points behind first place and well within shot of the top 10, as there's only, I believe, 2.5 points separating myself from the top 10. So with 4 weeks to go, plenty of opportunities to make ground on the leaders and get myself up into one of those top positions, and again, reach that 60-point goal that I set for myself at the beginning of the year. Well, again, week 15 is here. Going to move on and see which 5 games I like. Just a quick note, I'm going to give you the 5 games that I like right now, but with everything that's going on with COVID and injuries and, meteors and whatever else is going to happen between now and Saturday when these these games need to be submitted, anything can change. So I'm going to give you the 5 games that I like right now. Obviously, there's a possibility I could change, and if I do, I'll be sure to post any changes in the comments below, as well as in my blog at deadmoneymedia.com. So week 15's here, so let's get into it and see which 5 games I like for this upcoming slate. So the first game that I like is the Green Bay Packers, -5.5, heading out to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. This is just predicated on a lot on whether Lamar Jackson is going to play or not. He really is the engine that drives this Ravens team, and he's the one that's been dragging this carcass of a Ravens team over the finish line for most of this season, as they've just suffered injuries upon injuries upon injuries. Now they've got a COVID outbreak. Looks like they're going to be missing Marquise Brown. There's a bunch of other players on the COVID list for this team, and it just doesn't look like a good spot for them. You've got Green Bay, one of the hottest teams in the NFL, coming in with Aaron Rodgers, arguably the MVP of the NFL, playing at an elite level right now. And it's just, if they don't have Lamar Jackson, I just don't know how they're going to keep up. They might be able to keep this point spread close at the beginning of the game, but I just think there's no way for them to match point for point with this Green Bay offense. I think even though Green Bay has suffered some injuries, they've been able to manage because their offense is just so well balanced that they're able to cover up some of their deficiencies, particularly things like what we saw on special teams last week. But, again, that final score in that Chicago game is also kind of misleading because a lot of those points were scored on big plays or on special teams plays coming off of turnovers that gave the offense short fields. So, the Green Bay Packers defense is still playing at a pretty good level. The points that they gave up in that game last week don't really reflect how well this team has been playing. And again, it really has to do with Lamar Jackson. If Lamar Jackson's not playing for the Baltimore Ravens, as well as Hundley played for them last week in a losing effort for Baltimore, but in a noble effort that cost me a point in the contest last week, I don't think he's going to be able to pull off another game like that against this Green Bay defense. I just think it's too much to ask with them having so many missing pieces. They have no running backs left. They're going to be losing a couple of their wide receivers. Their offensive line is missing pieces. The defense has got injuries. They got people on COVID. It's just too much to ask of this Ravens team. And with it being 5.5, I think by the time we get to game time, if Lamar Jackson does not play, this game will be easily -7, if not 7.5 for Green Bay. So with it being only 5.5, I really like this number. I think Green Bay will have no problems covering it, and it's just a good spot for them. So for my first pick, give me the Green Bay Packers -5.5. So the next game that I like is the Minnesota Vikings -3.5, heading out to Chi-Town to take on the Chicago Bears. This is another one of those games with a team that's dealing with a serious COVID outbreak. The Chicago Bears have just been having players come up positive day after day all week. It looks like they got about 12 or 13 players on the COVID list right now, including guys like Allen Robinson, Cole Kmet, a bunch of their defensive backs, and all of their coordinators are all going to be out for this Monday night game. And we've got Minnesota coming in with an outside chance of making the playoffs at 6-7. If they win this game, they're at 500, and that gives them a shot at that final wild card spot. And we know that he's probably coaching for his job right now. So he's really got to try to make the playoffs and do something in the playoffs if he's going to have a position as a head coach for the Minnesota Vikings next year. And I think he knows it. I think his team knows it. I think they're going to come out and they're going to play well. We've seen this Vikings team play close in all their games. They'll get out to a lead and they'll let the other team come back, make it a close game, goes to overtime, win some, lose some, like a coin flip, turnout. And I just think in this particular game, they're going to close the deal. They're going to finish strong. They're not going to let the team come back once they get a lead on them. And again, this is just a bad spot for Chicago with all these injuries and all these players are going to be out. You're already behind the 8 ball with a rookie quarterback. Now you've got a new coordinator coming in, a play caller coming in that he's not accustomed to, a guy who's not accustomed to calling plays. They might have Matt Nagy call plays on offense, but I'm not sure what they're going to do on defense. And I just think it's a recipe for disaster for the Chicago Bears. And, this line, it's 3.5 in the contest. It's moved all the way up to 6 right now in the betting market at the Circa Sportsbook. And I expect it to go up even higher as more players probably come up positive. And we see that there's going to be less and less players available for this Chicago Bears team. So, again, this has a lot to do with the fact that it's almost like they're going to be going up against a practice squad with the Minnesota Vikings team that really needs this win. And with the way this line's moved, you're just getting so much value that I just think turning it down with an opportunity like this would just be foolish. So for my second pick, I'm going with the Minnesota Vikings -3.5. So the next game that I like is the Las Vegas Raiders -1, heading out to Cleveland to take on the Browns. This is another one of those games with a team dealing with a massive COVID outbreak. The Cleveland Browns are just going to be depleted at every single position, including their quarterback, where they're going to be down to their third-string quarterback, Nick Mullins, a guy they just signed off the street last week, who's really not even taking any reps with this team. They'll have Nick Chubb, but Kareem Hunt's out with an ankle injury, it looks like. The entire offensive line, wide receivers, tight ends, defensive line, defensive backs, punters, coaches. I mean, everybody for Cleveland right now is dealing with some kind of COVID issue, every position group. And, this is just a bad spot for them. You've got Las Vegas, which is pretty healthy for all intents and purposes, coming in with an outside shot of making the playoffs. If they win this game, they'll be back to 500 at 7-7. And, it just looks like a good spot for them to go out and get the victory. In the Circa contest, the line is only -1. At the Circa Sportsbook right now, they've moved this line to -3.5. And then originally, when this line first opened up, Cleveland was the favorite. But after all the injury or all the COVID news that we've had with this game, they've just completely flip-flopped this line and made the Las Vegas Raiders a -3.5 point favorite. Why not try to take advantage of this spot where, you're going to have a wounded team having to play this game and, not take advantage of it. I just think it's a good spot to get the Raiders here in a point where they just have to win the game against this very depleted Cleveland Browns team, and I'm going to use it to my advantage. So, that's really the only motivation I have to take this game. I think the defense for the Raiders will be able to get after Nick Mullins. They've got Ngakoue and they've got Crosby, two guys that can rush the quarterback. And if he doesn't have any chance to throw the ball, if he doesn't have any time to get the ball to his receivers, the play action doesn't work. They don't have to respect the pass. They can just key off on Chubb and stop the running game for Cleveland. And with their depleted offensive line, who knows how they're going to be able to run the ball to begin with anyway. And again, the Raiders, I think they'll be able to throw the ball. I think Derek Carr and the offensive, weapons that they have will be able to move the ball. I think Josh Jacobs will have a decent day. I don't know if he'll hit 100 yards, but it'll be enough to keep the offense or keep the defense for Cleveland honest and give Derek Carr an opportunity to hit some wide receivers and put some points on the board. And I just think, again, with everything that's going on with Cleveland, I think it'd be foolish not to take advantage of it. So for my next pick, I'm taking the Raiders -1. So the next game that I like is the Atlanta Falcons +9.5 heading out to San Francisco to take on the 49ers. I just think this is a good spot for the Atlanta Falcons. They've been playing well recently. Arthur Smith has gotten the offense going a little bit the last couple of weeks. This is a lot of points for the San Francisco 49ers to be given up, particularly at home, where we know that they have not been good against the spread. I've said it a few times throughout this season that, you fade San Francisco when they're at home and you bet them when they're on the road. And with Kyle Shanahan, that's really the trend you need to follow because he's 4-15-1 against the spread as a home favorite. So this is just a perfect spot for the Atlanta Falcons to come in here and, they can definitely cover this number and potentially, steal a victory. With the Atlanta Falcons right now, they're sitting at 6-7, so they have the potential to make the playoffs. If they win this game, they're at 500. And who knows, if they go on a run, they could make that final spot and, make the wild card. So they certainly have an incentive to come out and play their best. The 49ers have been playing well recently, but they've sustained some injuries on the defensive side of the ball. And I think that could hurt them if Atlanta's able to match them point for point throughout this game. The San Francisco offense has really looked good. They've gotten George Kittle back, and they've gotten Deebo Samuel back. And it's really, shown how important those two players are to this offense. But I think that they could struggle against this Atlanta defense that's been sneaky good. They're middle of the pack the last few games, like about the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season. So they're definitely turning a corner on that side of the ball. And, this is just a spot where you have to follow some of these trends every once in a while. And been one of the trend like that where with Kyle Shanahan as a favorite, you almost have to take the points with Atlanta and just, hope they cover the spread. Also sprinkle that money line if you're betting this game. But, with this many points in a home against the spread record that the San Francisco 49ers have, it's just a no-brainer to take Atlanta here and just hope that they can pull out the victory. So for my fourth pick, give me the Atlanta Falcons +9.5. So for my fifth pick, I'm going with the Arizona Cardinals -12.5, heading out to the Motor City to take on the Detroit Lions. This is just a matchup of two teams that are in totally different calibers as far as talent's concerned. The Arizona Cardinals, they lost against the LA Rams the other night, Monday night in prime time. Everybody saw Kyler have some struggles earlier on in that game. He had some turnovers, but let's be clear. The LA Rams are an elite team in the NFL, and they were desperate for that win. They couldn't afford to lose 2 games to one of their division rivals. So they had to have that victory, and they came out and they played really well, considering the fact that they were missing some of their key players due to the COVID issues. But the Arizona Cardinals are one of the best teams in the NFC right now, and the Detroit Lions are one of the worst teams in the NFC right now. And, they just don't have the talent to match up, the Detroit Lions. They played valiantly in a few of these games this year. They got a victory a couple weeks ago, but then we saw what happened to them when they went out and they played the Denver Broncos in Denver. And, when they go up against a really good defense and a team that can run the ball, they have no answers. And we know the Arizona Cardinals can certainly run the ball. Kyler Murray's finally starting to look like he's coming back into form. He did have some struggles the other day, but, he's coming back from that long break with the injury. So he's finally starting to get his feet under him. And, yes, they did lose DeAndre Hopkins, but this team's got so many other weapons on offense with A.J. Green, Rondell Moore, Christian Kirk, Zach Ertz, James Conner. I think he should be available, but even if he's not, they got Eno Benjamin. So, this team has just got depth at the skill position. So losing DeAndre Hopkins is not great, but I don't think it's that much of a drop-off for what this team is capable of. And with the Detroit Lions, they've got issues with COVID. They just lost their star tight end, T.J. Hawkinson, to a hand injury. It looks like Swift's probably not going to play again. The defense has got a bunch of injuries. The secondary's beat up, and now you're asking them to go up against this Arizona Cardinals team, a team that's built to play indoors, playing in the dome in Detroit, on that carpet so they can, that fast carpet for these wide receivers. I just think it's a bad spot for Detroit. And, they got blown out last week against Denver, and now they're asking you to lay 12.5 points with the Arizona Cardinals, but I just don't think it's really that many points when you look at the caliber of the two teams, particularly the offenses. I don't think Jared Goff's going to be able to score many points. I think this is probably going to be somewhere around 35-17, 34-17. So I think Arizona is going to be able to win this game pulling away. I don't think Detroit's going to be able to score many points on the Arizona defense. And, even though it is a big number, this is the time of the year when teams really start to separate themselves, when you start to know who are the good teams and who are the bad teams. And Arizona is a very good team, and Detroit is a very bad team. And if you're going to lay points with a team, or if you think a team's going to win, and you're laying points with them, you got to think they're going to cover if you think they're going to win. So I think they'll win. I think they'll cover. And I'm willing to lay the 12.5 points with Arizona because I believe they're just that good. So for my fifth and final pick, give me the Arizona Cardinals minus 12.5. So those are my 5 picks for Week 15. Be sure to check in at deadmoneymedia.com to make sure that if I post in the blog that I'm changing any picks, because we know with what's going on with COVID and everything else, things could change drastically between the time that I'm recording this video and Saturday. So I ask you, if you are just using these picks for placing bets, use caution because, again, anything can change between now and then. And some of these picks that I'm making right now are based on the fact that some of these players won't be available come Sunday. But the NFL did just change the protocol about, what qualifies players to be able to come back and play. So some of these players that I think might be out, and I'm handicapping them to be out, may actually be available and could completely change my pick. So once again, I'll post in the comments if I change any picks. I'll be sure to post it on my webpage at deadmoneymedia.com and the blog, and I'll also post it on Instagram at deadmoneymedia. But other than that, I hope everybody's having a lot of success this season. I really like to hear how everybody's doing in the contest. I hope you're making a lot of money. Everybody, let's enjoy this week 15, and thanks for watching.